Welcome back to Hannity. So once again, the alt-radical left is going after Republicans and freedom of speech. A New York Times columnist is even apparently blaming conservatives like Ann Coulter for the brutal attacks coming from the left. Now, Jeremy Peters wrote, quote, across the country, conservatives like her are eagerly throwing themselves into volatile situations like the one in Berkeley, emboldened by a backlash over what many Americans see as excessive political correctness. A president was gleefully taking up their fight, and liberals they accuse of trying to censor any idea they disagree with. Joining us now with reaction from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow, the National Deputy Chairman of the RNC Finance Leadership Team, personal attorney to President Trump, Michael Cohen. Good to see you both.
How are you,
Jay,
Sean?
let me...
Hey, Sean.
Good to see you both. Let me start here. I have spent a lot of time this week on this Coulter situation, campuses all across the country. The fact that conservatives, every word is monitored every second of every day on Fox, on talk radio. I really believe this is liberal fascism, and no prominent liberal ever speaks up and defends the right of conservatives to express their views.
Well, you're exactly correct. If you take the university campus, that's supposed to be uniquely the marketplace of ideas. And you know, the price of freedom is, in a free country, you're going to hear speech you disagree with. But you don't respond with violence or shutting the speech down. You respond to it with more speech. So that's the idea, that's the entire basis on which our constitutional republic exists, this idea of free discourse, freedom of speech. But those that are opposed to a particular view are engaging in classic censorship. You know, I've been arguing those cases, Sean, at the Supreme Court for 3 decades, this idea you can target a particular view for censorship. And the Supreme Court has always unanimously, right and left, said you don't do that in free speech areas.
You know, but it is interesting on the other hand, Michael, and that is that, all right, so you represent, on a personal level, the President of the United States, then when he worked for the Trump Organization. And what's amazing is they want the right to say any and everything about the man
Sean,
you know and have known for decades.
Yes, and Sean, unfortunately, the First Amendment applies to fools and sleazy people. And, you know, people like Maxine Waters or Nancy Pelosi have to understand that while they're protecting their First Amendment rights to say whatever they want, they have to understand that the other side has First Amendment rights as well. And their rights don't trump, for lack of a better word, the other side. What happened at Berkeley is a disgrace. The people, the administration at Berkeley should be ashamed of themselves, and so should the students, for that matter.
Yeah, I totally. And this is the thing. There's nobody, Jay, on the left.
Yep.
You know, I have like a couple of friends on the left that said, I'm right about this. Maybe they think it, maybe they believe it, but the fact that they don't stand up for Ann Coulter. Now, I'll give you an example. I've said many times on this program, I think Bill Maher is a slob. I can't stand the guy. I think he's horrible on TV. He's arrogant. He's elitist. He's condescending. But in a weird way, good for America, because if he can say all that crap on the left that he says, then maybe the left won't go after conservatives and try and shut them down like they're presently trying to demolish and shut down the Fox News channel.
Well, you can fundamentally disagree with someone on both a practical level and a policy level, and fundamentally disagree. And you may not agree with Bill Maher, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have the right to speak. Just like you have the right to speak, and others have the right to speak. And this idea that we're now going to enter into this sanitized version of free speech, so that if someone is personally offended by a message, they can censor that message. You know, this idea that the offended observer, someone that hears something they disagree with, can run to the police department of their school and say, arrest that person or shut them down. I'm offended by that speech.
But
that tells you
how
much danger we're in.
But then they got the boycott thing that they do. All right, people are paid. This is well-funded, well-organized to monitor every word that I say on radio and TV every day. And then if I say one thing out of place that they disagree with, politically incorrect, then they'll just say, oh, let's start an advertising boycott. And that's just another background way to...
You know what, Sean? It's, as per the president, just because they have the First Amendment right to say what it is that they want doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. You know, parents are always telling their children, and just because you have the right to say something doesn't mean that you should, and a little censorship goes a long way. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be happening, and it's not something that the that the left want as it relates to President Trump. Everything that he does, everything that he says comes in with scrutiny. The scrutiny is most of the time.
It's worse than that.
It's obnoxious,
vile.
it's rude, and worse than that, it's offensive to the office of the presidency. And they need to stop.
That's a great point.
Yeah, they just need to stop.
They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop.
But,
Jay, where does this end? We got to take a break.
Well, the fact is that self-censorship's one thing. You could decide, I'm not going to say something, but that doesn't give you the right to stop the other person from speaking. Where does it end? Unless people stand up and fight for that free speech right that they have enshrined in the Constitution, we lose it. We either protect it or we lose it.
Except also when President Trump turns around and you start to look at the accomplishments that he's going to be rolling out day after day, week after week, year after year, and then people start to see with more money in their pocket, with jobs, they're going to see national security, our military, our veterans taken care of. They're going to start to understand that he is the man that we all know him to be, and then they'll feel ashamed of themselves.
I'm not so sure they're going to ever feel ashamed of themselves, Michael. I wish that were true. You're assuming that I believe that the left has become so unhinged. They never saw this coming. They don't understand him. And they're in a complete meltdown mode, and anything goes for them, meaning saying anything. But we'll wait.
But they'll ultimately
stopping
understand.
Other people from speaking.
Yeah, they're going to also
stopping
understand.
other people from speaking.
Ultimately, they're going to understand that he's going to bring success and he's going to make America great, and they're going to feel it in their pockets. So I think
liberal fascism is alive and well. There are groups of people, if they could, they will take every single conservative out. In the meantime, anybody around the president that supports the president.
Well, look at me. Look at how they attack me on a day-by-day basis.
That's true. Or me or Jay or anybody. Anybody that supports the president is getting hit, and even his own 10-year-old son and his daughter and his wife. It's ridiculous. All right.
Have a good one.
Up next tonight.